Hello, everyone. How's everyone this Wednesday? Can you hear me okay? I can't talk very loud. I've had a sickness and my throat is kind of sore, so if you can't hear me, just tell me, please. Okay. Just mm. Okay, I have 6 o'clock, so we'll get started. For those of you who weren't here earlier, I have been sick, so my throat is a little bit sore. I'm going to be talking a little bit quieter today, I think. So if I say something and you don't understand, just let me know. I'll be watching the chat, of course, like always. So thank you all for being here. We are going to be talking about Minjung art today. But first, let's talk about your plenary session responses. So please review the specific feedback that I gave you on Canvas under your grades. I left everyone comments on what they can do to improve for next time. I am going to grade them this week a little bit more strictly. So because you do need to be make sure that you're doing these properly. So some general issues I will list though are I really recommend that you restate the prompt question in your answer. Some of you, those of you who did this, you directly answered the prompt. But those of you who didn't do this, you started going on tangents about other things that weren't really relevant to the actual question. So if, like last week, if the question is what is its call to action, in your interpretation, you could just easily just say Kim Il-sung among workers' call to action is, right? Sounds simple, and it is simple, but it really helps you stay on track with answering the question. Okay, citation format. I thought I explained this enough, but I guess I didn't. Like half of us did this correctly. So it's just a parentheses, and you need to put the author's last name and then the page number and then another parentheses. That's it. Uh, you don't need the year, you don't need the title. If it's a video, just put the if it's a video, I'll be more lenient about it. You can put the title of the video, but definitely have the speaker's name in there. Which all the videos we watch, you have the name of the person who's speaking in it. And then formality. Yeah, this was a little bit weird. I've actually never had this problem before, but several of you, um, I don't know where this came from, but college level writing. So I should not be seeing contractions in any of these responses. Um, it's just not formal. It's not how you're supposed to write or how you're expected to write at the college level. And I shouldn't just be getting either one huge block of text. It should be broken up into paragraphs that are organized by your idea of what you're talking about. You have it really easy because I've told you you should have a description and an interpretation. So those are two separate paragraphs. The other thing is, don't just, make each sentence its own paragraph. Also, like it should make sense what you're doing here. So, are there any questions about the plenary session responses going forward here? No, no. Okay. All right. Thank you. So next, the midterm. Okay. So I know it's crazy, but we already have the midterm next week. So it's going to open on Monday, at midnight, 12 o'clock a.m., and it will be due at 11:59 p.m. It is a Word doc. I should have put this on the slide. Why didn't I put this on the slide? It'll be a Word document that you go in on Canvas. You'll see it under the week 4 course module. You'll download the Word document. You'll type your answers into it, and then you'll just resubmit it in that same portal, okay? Um, so it's an open book exam. I can't sit next to you while you do this at home over the week, so I can't tell you not to use notes. In fact, I encourage you to go back into things that we've read, rewatch things that we've watched as you answer the questions, because as you'll see, part of the grading is including references to those materials. So there's going to be 6 short answer questions, maybe kind of 3 short answer, 3 long answer, depending on your perspective on what counts as short. Each of them is going to be worth 10 points, and it's going to cover the content weeks 1 through 4. 3 of them will be like content or opinion questions, and 3 of them are going to be visual analyses. 2 of them will be about a single artwork, and 1 of them will be comparative, and we're going to be practicing and learning how to do comparative today. And the artworks that will show up, they could be from class, from the blogs, or from the readings. I'm sorry, yes, February 9th, not 2nd. Not the February 2nd is this week. Thank you, Jimin. Yeah, February the 9th. Friday, February the 9th is the date that it's due. Sorry about that. And I'll send a reminder on Monday that this is open. Start it sooner rather than later because it will take you a while. Hopefully not like a crazy amount of time, but so are there any questions about this? And next week I'll go over it. I'll show you in class, and yeah, you do not have a good question, Daphne. You will have a blog, but you will not have a plenary response. The midterm counts as your after class assignment, but I just give you all week to do it because it makes more sense. You should be able to do at 5 of the questions when it opens on Monday. Only one of the questions is going to be about what we talk about next week. So that one you'll probably want to wait to do after class, but the other ones you can do if you want. You can do them before or after. Okay. We will continue on then. So here's our attendance question for today. Have you ever seen or been to a demonstration or a protest, whatever you want to call it? And if so, what have you been to? So I've been to a few before I moved here to Kansas 3 years ago. I was pretty active. I lived in Columbus, Ohio, and I was pretty active in politics. It's the capital of Ohio, so there's a lot of stuff. Um, and so we We were pretty active, and I would go to things there. I have not really gone to anything since I have been here in Kansas. Oh, Westboro Baptist Church. Are they around here? Oh, you accidentally and Daphne ended up in Gwangju, where we're talking about today. Yeah, Gwangju, a political protest in Gwangju. Oh, good. Okay, so Claire's been to the Black Lives Matter. Yeah, I have gone to multiple Black Lives Matter demonstrations and abortion rights, Claire. Yes, one on campus. Yeah, so different universities have different rules. The university I used to go to before I came here, they did not allow any protests on campus, which was kind of weird. But you could like do soliciting and stuff for political causes, but you couldn't have a quote unquote protest. I think it's maybe different here. Yes, Ryan's been if you go to Pride, Pride is like one big demonstration, really. It's a little bit different, but um Ryan's talking about going to queer rights protests and BLM marches. Um, oh, they're from Topeka. Oh, okay, gotcha. I haven't heard much about them recently. About I'm sorry, Westboro Baptist. Oh, they come to KU sometimes. Oh my Lord. That's interesting. Yes, I'm sure a while ago or this year was probably a lot of either pro-Israel or pro-Palestine demonstrations. The pro-Palestine walk on campus, yeah. A Gaddafi protest, yeah. That's interesting. See, I'm glad I hear this from you because I feel like I never see any kinds of demonstrations or protests around here. And maybe I'm just too removed because I'm not from here or um, I wasn't in my like, I guess, young adulthood here. So I don't always know what's going on, I guess. But yeah, so I'm glad to hear this. So protest is really important to the history of 20th century Korea. There have been a lot of protests that expanded into nationwide movements in 20th century Korean history. And we will learn about the protests in the first half of the century, which is the Japanese colonial period, next week. But after the 1945 division of Korea and the sequential Korean War, South Korea was under military dictatorships. In April 1960, university students across South Korea led the first major movement against the military dictatorship, and this is called the April Revolution. So you didn't really read about that one yet, but it's important. So while that ousted the dictator at the time, it did not result in any systemic change. So it didn't result in democratization. The major movement that we're focusing on today is the Minjung movement, which began 20 years later, and that was catalyzed by the Gwangju Uprising of May in 1980. And this climaxed in 1987 and resulted in the military dictatorship giving in and allowing democratic elections for the head of state. So, what is Minjung? What do you think? What is Minjung? Based on what you've read, what you've been listening to this week, how would you define it? What would you say if somebody asked you this question? An artistic and political movement. That's it's on the right track. Might want to be a little bit more specific though. There's a lot of artistic and political movements. What makes Minjung specific? People centered. Um, yes, it is centered around people, but what people? Who? The common people. Yes. So we'll talk about that in a moment. But yeah, so everyday people, we could say. Good. Yes, utilitarian art, right? There was a lot of art that it had a specific reason, right? It has specific purpose, not just art for art's sake, right? Yes, Francis, very important. It's based in Korea. It's very important to understand this. It is very Korea centric. It is about Korea specifically. Yeah. Um, let's see what else. I'm reading through everyone's. Yes, Korean traditional culture and the fight for democracy. That's good, Daphne. Yeah. So again, bringing it back to it's about Korean people, and them wanting to maintain some sense or some idea that they have about traditional Korean culture, and they also want democracy. Those are definitely two things that are involved here. Yeah, South Korean working people, Elsa says. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Working people. I like that. I like that a lot too. Maybe a little bit better than common people, just people who are working, maybe. Yes, laborers and students. Hayden, very good, very important. It was really sparked by the laborers and the students. Primarily, well, it depends on who you talk to, who was the main leader. Um, but they were both very involved in it. Yes, Fatima, it's kind of this, it's a response or a reaction to the rapid industrialization. Exactly. Exactly. Workers' rights, Claire, yes. Ryan says labor rights too. Yes, exactly. Good, yeah. Good. So I think we're all on the same page. We all kind of get it, right? So you could just vaguely or like really easily say it's this 1980s movement for democratization in South Korea that was catalyzed by the Gwangju massacre, or I'm sorry, Gwangju uprising. Either one is fine. You'll see both written, Gwangju massacre, Gwangju uprising. Um, and it's particularly this response to the history of authoritarian regimes and labor conditions, particularly lack of labor rights in South Korea. So under these dictators, who we'll talk a little bit more about shortly. So the reason I want to caution you, and a lot of people have critiqued, I know Charlotte Horlick, we're going to read a lot of her stuff. A lot of people have critiqued her translation of the term in that book as common people because the two characters, they're from Chinese characters and they're put next to each other. Um, Min just means the people, and Jung means gathered or gathering. So it just means literally the people gathered. So it doesn't have to just be the common people, but it is generally speaking this idea of laborers, students, people who are on the lower social status gathering together is the idea behind it. But there were, a lot of the people who were students, they actually did come from like wealthy families and stuff like that too. A lot of them were actually from rural areas of Korea who came into Seoul, particularly, or into the city for school. But some of them were also students of wealth. So that's kind of why it's like a little iffy to call it just common people. All right. So to understand the Mijuk movement's purpose a bit more clearly, we need to go back to the 1960s, after that April Revolution I was talking about. So this resulted in a man called Park Chung-hee taking power as a military dictator. So he's probably the most controversial figure in modern South Korean's history. Every person in South Korea has a different opinion of him and his legacy. Importantly, Park's industrialization programs of the 1960s are the reason that South Korea eventually became a global economic powerhouse. This period is now called the Miracle on the Han River. So Park geared the South Korean economy towards exporting manufactured goods, especially to its allies like the US, Europe, and Japan. And he focused on heavy industry like shipbuilding and machinery. Park's primary political ideology was anti-communism, and his regime implemented nationwide educational and cultural programs geared towards developing a Korean national identity that believed South Korea was superior to North Korea. So he normalized relations with Japan and received support from the US, but he got power hungry. And in the 1970s, he established a new constitution that gave him sole reign as the president of South Korea for unlimited terms. And that did not sit well even with his own officials. And he was assassinated by his head of the Korean CIA, who he had just appointed, actually. So what do you think, based on what you read about him? Is he a good guy or a bad guy? or something else? So Kyle, to be honest, people have different views on so Kyle's question is, was he officially backed by the US or was it more unspoken? So the first dictator of South Korea, his name was Lee Seung-man. He was officially appointed and supported by the US military government in 1948 to be elected as the first quote unquote president. Park Chung-hee took power because after this April Revolution in the 1960s, Lee Seung-man had to go into hiding. And Park Chung-hee had his own kind of faction within the military, and so he staged a coup. Um, but the US more or less did not stop him from doing that. And they were definitely willing to, as we'll see in a moment, when we talk about his economic policies, the US was very willing to give loans to South Korea under his direction, to develop their economy. So it depends on what your view of indirect versus direct support is. Yeah. Ryan says kind of good and bad, yeah. And Claire, yeah, maybe he had good intentions originally, but unfortunately it just he kind of went the wrong way. Um, maybe he's an extremely bad man, Callie. Yeah, definitely. I mean, he is a military dictator at base, right? Which is kind of something that's hard to be like, yeah, that makes him good, you know? Yeah, Tyler, that's a good way. Like he had maybe the right interest in wanting to help South Korea develop and have a better life for people, but he was too nationalist and authoritarian. Yeah, Hunter, just trying to grab too much power, but he did accomplish a lot. Yeah. That's why it's so difficult kind of to have it's really difficult to debate his legacy because um he was very helpful, but at the same time, there was all these underlying bad things going on. Let's see. Yes. Yeah, exactly, Jimin. So Jimin, I think Jimin just directs messaged me, but not everyone can see this. So there was recently that well, not really recently now, it was almost 10 year going on nearly 10 years ago now. There was a president named Park Geun-hye. She was his daughter. She got elected president, but then she was impeached. Um, this was in the middle of the 2010s. I can't remember a specific year now. I think it was 2015 or 2016. The older generation of in Korea have very fond memories of Park Chung-hee, generally speaking. I've even had a professor, and who was much older, who she really loved him. She thought he was the best leader Korea had ever had. And she made sure that her students thought the same thing. Um, but so you'll see a lot of older generations kind of reminisce about him. But younger people, generally speaking, see him more as, yeah, the dictator that he really was too. Which is why I say it depend. No matter you can talk to so many different people who are from Korea, and they will have a completely different opinion on him. Yeah, I mean, even a lot of people who are older disagree with him as well, Ian, you know? So it's very hard to say. I've had conversations with all sorts of people who have different views on him. So let's move on though. But one of the big things that he really left that we talk about are the Jebar. So the main focus of Park's industrialization policy was on developing extant family-owned and already pretty successful companies. These are called jebar, meaning property and lineage. Je is property, par is lineage. And so to develop these companies, Park funneled government loans to them, and this allowed them to grow exponentially and become the conglomerates that we know today. So who knows a Jebar? I think like a few weeks ago, many of you named some, actually. Who are some Jebar? Family-owned conglomerates. Some specific ones. Yeah, here's three big ones. Samsung. Samsung is the biggest one. LG is after that. There's one more. Yes, Hyundai, Daphne. There's another one that's called SK, but SK isn't so international. They're more still just in Korea, maybe in Japan a little bit. But yeah, Samsung, LG, and Hyundai are definitely like these now international Korean family-owned Korean conglomerates, right? So, um, but if the government and private companies are working together, what issues might arise? So, what do you notice from the reading? What were some of the issues that Robinson was talking about? If you have the government and these private companies in cahoots with each other, what tends to happen? Yeah, Ian, unchecked power, Mitchell, zero regulations. Yes, exactly. Corruption, Hunter, yes, extreme labor. Yeah, exactly. I mean, basically, right, the workers get overlooked. So it was difficult for workers to attain healthy and safe working conditions. And as you can imagine, women and children were the two demographics who suffered really the most, although, it's not a competition, but there were especially no protection specifically for these groups. So it's this situation that continued into the 1980s that led workers to protest and demonstrate on a large scale as part of the Minjung movement. So you could see here in this image, this is a picture of a textile factory in the 60s. And I was reading about this. And after primary school, these young girls, they're like 12, they would come here and they would work a 14-hour shift. So they were basically working their entire lives as this young. So let's do a little basic visual analysis here. Let's just focusing on interpretation more than description. We're going to do that a few times today. So looking at this image here, what does it convey about the labor conditions in South Korea? And what are you seeing that's making you say that? What do you see that makes you say that? Yeah. Yes, good, Claire. So everyone looks really tired, sad, and cramped. Yeah, they look really cramped together, right? Um, Kyle, people are working on top of each other, literally. Yeah, exactly. You can see the way these figures are overlapping, right? They made it so that the figures are overlapping and you can't really tell who's who or what they're doing. It's just so busy and jumbled. Oh, there's a large man. Callie says, demanding boss from the large man yelling from a window or an opening. Mm, maybe this guy on the ladder? Is that what you're talking about? Maybe that's it. Yes, very cramped spaces, right? Exactly. And dark. Yeah, Tyler says it's dark, exactly. Like this, the use of color here, just black and white, is very intentional. It really it helps convey that sense of depression and defeat and misery that these people are feeling, right? In this densely packed workspace. Um, let me see here. Oh, Cameron, I like this. Literally being crushed by industry. Yeah, it's like, um, I really like the way you say this, the way that the piece is composed and framed, right? So notice how it is framed, like they created, or the artist put these black lines in here, right? Kind of like walls and floors to make you feel or see the sectioning and how they were in these tight spaces, right? So the framing is very important here. Yeah. Um, very kind of, let's see. Yeah, someone taking meds. Cade. Cade says, so if you look here at the bottom, there are, of course, there's all these people up here who are working, but you see some people down here at the bottom. One of them seems to maybe be throwing up or coughing up. Not sure. One of them is like taking, there's like maybe tea here for caffeine, and then there's some pills here that they're taking, right? Trying to stay awake. Yeah, very good, Jimin. And all of them are, look at the way their bodies are um bent, I guess is maybe I want to say positioned, right? They all are hunched over, their necks are like poured down, like they don't have enough room, and they're really focused on the work, right? Very good. Yeah, exactly. Good. Let's see. Yeah, great. These are all great. These are all great answers. You definitely got them. Good. So it's this kind of stuff that people were getting fed up with, as you can imagine. And this kind of leads us to the Gwangju Uprising. So the Gwangju Uprising happened in May 1980, and after Park was assassinated, a man named Jeondu Hwan took over as a military dictator and instituted martial law to control the country. But on May 18th, students of Jeonnam University in Gwangju, South Jeolla Province, demonstrated against his martial law. So Chun's military police attempted to stop them with force, but they also attacked the spectating civilians, causing the civilians to join the students against the police. The students and civilians managed to hold back the military police for 9 days until the military police retook control of the city. In the end, over 200 civilians were either dead or missing. Over 3,000 were wounded and over 1,300 were arrested. So this was the Gwangju Uprising, and it brought forth the nationwide democratization movement in South Korea, the Minju movement. So one of the big questions that people ask is, and Kyle was kind of asking this about Park earlier, but what is the U.S. involvement in all of this? So there are documents that people have studied and tried to understand what exactly was it the U.S. that told Chun to use the military police to use force in Gwangju. Well, there is this document which is from the ambassador to Korea at the time, and I'm just going to read you two quotes from it. His name is William Glaystein. So Glaystein said, I said that the policy decisions of May 17th had staggered us. We agreed that firm anti-riot measures were necessary, but the accompanying political crackdown was political folly and clearly had contributed to the serious breakdown of order in Gwangju. And then later, the United States is doing all it can to help in the restoration of order. I continued. We have agreed to chop forces under combined U.S. South Korean military forces command to Korean authorities for use in Gwangju. So what do you think? Does it seem like the US was involved in it? Or what seems to have been the US's kind of relation to the Gwangju uprising and massacre? Yeah, this telegram seems to be like the US. It seems like the US maybe just let them do what they did, and then because they did something that really went wrong, now the US is like, okay, we're gonna step in here. What Kyle says, yeah. Yeah, Tyler, it's kind of like they want to aid them. Well, what they're saying is they're going to at the end, because of the Gwangju massacre, they're going to chop the forces of the CFC, which is the combined U.S. South Korean military forces. Um, so they're trying to take any U.S. related forces out of Gwangju. Complacent, Francis says. Yeah, it seems like they didn't say yes, but they also didn't say no, right? It's kind of one of those issues where they definitely could have said don't do that. Um, but they didn't say that. But they didn't seem to say yes, you should do that also. Yeah, exactly, Hunter. It's kind of like they let them do things and then it got out of hand, so now the US wants to get involved. Yeah, exactly, Claire. Definitely not what they want. What they didn't, South Korea didn't do it. John didn't do it the way the US was anticipating or expecting, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you're welcome to think what you would like to think. Um, yeah, here we go. Elsa has a good thought here. So it seems like the US at least allowed for it to occur, but then they thought it would get better to get involved after the fact since everything went crazy. That definitely seems to be what it is. So it's a little bit ambiguous. Different people have different interpretations or beliefs about this incident in relation to the US involvement. So you'll read different things and whatnot. So all right. So now we're really in the 1980s with the Minjung movement. We've already discussed what Minjung means. So what were its goals? Some of us use the goals to define it a little bit. There's 5 goals, and Professor Stiller outlined this in her video. And you really need to be able to articulate these 5 goals because you will probably see it on as a question soon on something that you need to do. What 5 ones? Does anyone remember? You don't have to have all 5 of them memorized right now, but what was at least one of them that you can remember? Yes, good. Here's 2. Truman says democracy, labor rights. Absolutely. Democracy, labor rights. Those are the 2 big ones. There's one that kind of comes with it, though. So we have democratization, free elections. So freedom of speech, anti-Western reliance. Claire, that's good. That's definitely one of them. Yeah, Hunter, free speech. Yeah, freedom of press and speech. Yeah, freedom of press and speech. Um, anti-foreign influence. Yeah, exactly. And workers' rights. So we have, and then what about this one though? Reunification of the Korean Peninsula. Do you remember this one? Um, they wanted to reconnect with North Korea. They felt that these warring governments between North and South Korea were doing the Minjung injustice, right? The Minjung. So a lot of us had South Korea. Minjung in the 80s, they were referring to all Korean people. It doesn't matter if you're in South Korea at the time or North Korea. So they view the warring governments as something that needs to be gotten rid of. And then yeah, so liberation from the US, particularly the US, cultural imperialism in order to save Korean traditions. What is cultural imperialism? Have you ever heard that term before? What does that refer to? American cultural imperialism. You hear this a lot. Well, maybe you don't hear it a lot, but I feel like I do. Yeah, okay. So Cameron says domination of a culture by an outside culture. Yeah, it's kind of it, but there's a lot of different ways that could look. That's kind of imperialism in a basic sense. Okay, Claire, yeah, pushing your culture onto another country, right? Um, Here we go. Tyler has another buzzword that goes with this. Soft power. Using soft power slash culture to have control over another country. Yeah. So unlike imperialism, which is traditionally there's military imperialism, which is using the military to seek control over another country. What they're talking about is the influx of American cultural products like arts, media, products that you can buy, uh, philosophies and ideas coming from the US. The military is definitely part of that. Excuse me. But what cultural imperialism is referring to is this case of US um of products, and I keep repeating that. I feel like that's not right. I've explained this so many times. Kind of oh, here we go. Kylie says social influence. Thank you, Kylie. The social aspect of it. Yeah, exactly, is what we're talking about. Not just like one culture dominates the other, but they trying to dominate the other through the use of social things. Does that make sense? I think it'll make sense if we look at the artwork that we're about to look at. Okay. All right. So Minjung art. So what kind of art? What kinds of art is Minjung art? This is kind of the hard part about Minjung art. How do you define it? What kind of art is in Minjung? Yeah, Tyler. Any media, all media, lots of variety. Yeah, exactly. Very good. All types. It really could be anything. I'm trying to think if I've seen anything. I feel like I can think of an example of most media that is Minjung, um, including film and everything like that. Um, yeah, so we're talking more about visual art in this class, but Professor Stiller talks about dances and songs too, right? That's definitely part of this. Um, so yeah, prints, banner paintings for protesting, and then like paintings for galleries, in solidarity with Minjung. That's kind of one of the big differences that people make is between protest art and then gallery art. Um, so then who were Minjung artists? Who became Minjung artists? Yeah, we'll talk about the politicization of it in a moment. So students are one of them. Who else? It wasn't only students. I don't know if this gets emphasized enough. Yeah, Ian, activists, laborers. Yeah, exactly. So a lot of students, um, and many of the students would graduate and they'd become professional artists. But there are also a lot of quote unquote amateur artists. So Cameron says here, people formerly trained in art who rejected academic art for folk art. Yeah. So some of them would reject what they were actually taught at universities at the time, and they would paint or they would work in media that weren't there. But there were several artists, one of whom we will talk about later, who had no formal training in art whatsoever and was a Minjung artist, particularly a protest art artist. Yeah, exactly, Ryan. There was kind of this idea a lot of the art students had that they needed to unlearn the way they were told to do art. Yeah. So yeah, what does Minjung art do? I think we all got this all right too. What was the so he said utilitarian. There's something that a phrase that Charlotte Horlick used particularly. Do you remember this? And this was students had to unlearn what they were learning in school because they weren't learning this part of art. Root seeking. Close. We're getting there. Hold on. Going to countries and learn techniques also. Yeah, so a lot of the artists, like I was just kind of mentioning earlier, they were actually from the rural, the countryside, and they came in to Seoul to go to the university and learn art. A lot of them did that. And then some of them went out, right? Back out to the countryside to learn different techniques. Yes, exactly, Claire. Yeah, the political message. So the social role. So try and think about that. What is the social role of art? That's what they were really concerned with. They felt like a lot of these artists felt like they had just been learning art for art's sake, and that wasn't enough for them. So they were interested in the social role of art, the way that art can communicate politics, like we've been talking about here, right? So not just about the aesthetic, but about what's the meaning behind the art and what the art can do for society. Yeah, and then Minjung art also definitely will bring up critiques that the Korean people had for the government. Good. All right, so let's look at some pieces here. So this one was in the Charlotte Horlick's chapter. So let's just focus on describing right now. So I have the basics here. So I'm not going to make you restate the basics to me, but remember, start with the basics. Oh, this painting is rice planting from 1987 and then repainted in 1993 by the artist Shin Hak-chul. And then you talk about the medium. So what's the medium? What would you say is the medium here? Yes, very easy. This one's pretty easy. Oil painting on canvas or oil on canvas. Um, any of that is fine. It's fine. Okay, so now we're gonna get into the hard parts. So the iconography. What are some subjects in this artwork that you would pick out and you would want to say, oh, this is in this artwork. This is in this artwork. Okay, Uncle Sam. We got an Uncle Sam. Good. We could do this with this artwork particularly. We could do it for hours, but let's just do a couple of them. Mount Pektu. Yes, Mount Pektu. Kids playing in the background. Very good. Good. Ox, rice fields. Very important. Get the setting in there. I put that in this particular. I don't think I mentioned that yet. Iconography is the time for you to talk about the setting. Where are the people? That's part of the iconography. Um, Good. There's a body of water. There's workers. Good, Claire. Traditional Korean dress. Very kind. Well, is there? I guess, yeah, there's some traditional looking dresses. They're actually more modernized, but yeah, they kind of look traditional. Good, Daphne. People dancing and eating around the field. Very important. Francis, peach tree. Yes, up here at the top, right? Exactly. Okay, Hope. Hope said the big one that I'm surprised hasn't come up yet. Farmers. Farmers, the subject, right, of this painting. If I ask you, what is the iconographic focus? I guess there's kind of two, but one of them is the farmers, right? You could just generally say, oh, it's focused on the farmers. And I think you're pretty correct about that, right? That's who the majority of the people depicted are. But we have this pile up in the front, right? And so there's a lot of different stuff in there. Tanks, cigarettes, barbed wire from Fatima. Francis says mowed grass. Oh yeah, the grass does look pretty mowed. Callie, very good. Romanticized landscape. Okay, we'll talk about that. How is it romanticized? What do you think? Yes, good, Claire. And the cow, the ox in front, is trampling on the Western goods. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, everything is too perfect. Maybe when we talk about the style, we can kind of think about how the style relates to it being romanticized. Yeah, big smiles, Hayden. Very good. Or Gus, sorry. And luscious green fields, children playing. Ian, clean and pristine. Yeah, it looks clean and pristine. Good. Yeah, these are all things that I said. I mean, you could go on and on with this artwork about the iconography of it. Um, and I've presented about this artwork a few times. I love this artwork, which is part of the reason why I want to talk about it. Good. So what about the composition? So how would you explain how it's laid out? What are some things you would say about the way it's laid out? Okay, Jimin said collage. Collage like. I would not call this collage because collage usually is a medium referring to the mixture of a bunch of different originally disparate pieces put together. That's a collage. But you could say something like collage like, particularly in the way in the front in the well, I'm going to give away one of the words that I'm looking for here. Foreground, right? There's this collage of icons, right? Of stuff. Callie, yes, vertical. It's very vertical, right? And it has a greenery border. You could also say a foliate border. That means there's foliage like leaves and stuff that are on the border, framing this scene, right? Very good, Cameronia. The cow is in the center, right? Or the ox. It's an ox. Um, and so it really brings your attention to what the ox is doing, right? Let's see. Hope. Yes, very good. So this has what's called, you can either say 1 point perspective or linear perspective. What is that referring to? 1 point perspective or linear perspective? So that's referring to, let's see, I'm trying to see if anyone already answered that. Yes, very good, Claire. How objects recede into the background. So look here. Notice how in the mountains, they look much smaller than the men in the front and even these icons here, all this stuff here. And like Claire is saying, it gives the illusion of depth. So this is like the horizon line. Have you heard that term used before? This is like the horizon line, and everything is built or depicted off of a single point. I can't really tell where the single point would be here. There's probably a few points, but it's just generally speaking, this serves as like the horizon line. And so, yeah, it gives that illusion of it seems like you could go into it and like those are further away than the men are, right? So, yeah. So that's linear perspective or 1 point perspective. There are versions of linear perspective that have multiple points, but this just so you can just focus on the idea of the horizon line. Good. Okay, let me see some other things here. Foreground. Yeah, exactly. So there's this foreground and the background. So we have all this stuff, this what he's calling junk or what he wants to say is junk in the front. And in the background we have all the farmers and everything, right? So there's this in this beautiful landscape. Yeah, good. Okay, style. So what would you say about some of you have already started saying this a little bit, and so the style is what makes it seem romantic. So how would you describe how it looks? What about the colors, the lines, the textures? Yeah, vibrant colors. I said vibrant. I also say like saturated. They're very like heavily like, ooh, this is a very thick green, like it's a very green, right? It's not really realistic colors, but yes, it is. Hunter says dreamlike. Ooh, who knows the word in art for dreamlike? What is that called? What is that's a movement that was really interested in dreams. Yes, Tyler says it here. Surrealism. So, realism. So, you can be realist and surrealist at the same time. So, it's realism in the sense that, yes, these people, they do look, generally speaking, kind of like proportionally correct. Um, things look kind of realistic, right? But at the same time, there's a little bit of an idealization, which you see Miranda's pointing that out from the vibrancy. And then what other kind of aspects do you notice don't quite line up correctly with realism, which makes this seem kind of dreamy at the same time? What other things are kind of dreamlike about this? Yeah, the border. Very good. Yeah, the border. That's not something in real life. There's no borders. Well, I mean, there's a lot of borders in real life, but you wouldn't actually see this kind of a border in real life, only in a painting, right? Yeah, and the layering, Callie. Yeah. So, just the entire act of what's going on here is not something that could really happen in real life. Like you can't just plow out this whole pile of stuff here. Um, What about the children back here? Yeah, Ian's picking up on it. The perspective isn't completely accurate. Yeah. Look at these children compared to the mountains. What do you notice? Yeah, the sizing is kind of wrong, right? Yeah, exactly. So the perspective, so yes, it is a linear perspective. You can tell that there's a horizon line here, but it's not super like it's not extremely accurate. It's only approximately accurate. Yeah, exactly. Good. All right. Yeah, good. That's a good way to put it too, Hope. It's not super naturalistic. Yeah, it's not naturalistic. Like it doesn't look like how it should naturally look, right? Yeah. Yeah, and there's multiple scenes going on, Daphne. That's a very good point. There's multiple scenes. We have the rice planting here in the front. You have the harvest in the back, the children playing back here. There's many different scenes going on. Good. Okay, so interpret. So what Minjung do you think this artwork conveys? What Minjung do you think is being conveyed? There could be multiple. And there's also you know, maybe you think one thing, but no one said that one yet. But yeah. Okay, so let's see. Unification of the peninsula. Absolutely. Yeah, unification of the peninsula. We'll get to that in a moment. Yes, romanticization of rural Korea. Exactly. Less Western, like less Western. So rejection of, as Tyler says, rejection of Western influence. And Hunter, back to the farmers, right? The traditional way of life that they're imagining, right? Good. Yeah, condemning industrialization. Very good. Good, yeah. So I think we're um excuse me. Exactly. Good. So Fatima started answering this question already. So what do you see that makes you say that? Well, Fatima says the American culture. So all these icons and symbols of American culture are down here in this pile, right? And they're being shoved out. So we can see, we can envision this narrative of these farmers who are Korean being pushing this culture out, right? Very good. What else do you see? What do you see? So that definitely talks about anti-Western or anti-American US imperialism. What do you see that could be referring to unification? Okay, Mount Pektu, children playing. Yeah. So, Mount Pektu in the background. What does Mount Pektu kind of signify? Yeah, exactly, Cameron. That's a really great way of putting it. The northern extent of the peninsula. So not like it can signify North Korea, but it signifies that northern border, like the vast extent of the peninsula, right, goes to Mount Pektu. Um, and so in that way, he's kind of evoking this sense of a whole Korea, right? Yeah, and then Maricela, people just coming together to enjoy the harvest and their hard work, right? Yeah, they do hard work and they come together to do the hard work and then they come together enjoying the harvest to do the harvest. Exactly. Just that act of coming together. That's very important. Very good. Great. So what did the reading say? Do you remember what did Charlotte Horlick say? Yeah, exactly, Elsa. So the American culture, you can tell because of this frame, right? It's pushing out the Western culture literally out of Korea, out of the picture plane. That's a really good way to put it, out of the picture plane. Um, and then the feeling of two halves with the mountains representing the north. Exactly, very good. So remember, he intended for this. I think she talked about this, right? I just reread it. So he wanted to the artist's intent was to represent unification through rice planting. So the the artist was intending this to be an image of North and South Korea coming together, kind of like how we've been talking about, right? To back to these traditional ways of life. And through rice planting, they become one again, right? Sharing that tradition of rice, that agricultural tradition. So that was in the text. Okay. All right, we gotta keep moving on though, because we still got a bit to do. All right, now let's look at this one. So this is different. We have the basics down here. It's Kim Bong-joon is the artist. It's called Releasing Grief for Unification. What's the medium? Yes, woodblock, a woodblock print. Exactly. Kind of add to it. So it's a woodblock print on paper. Very good. Color. I'm not sure specifically about this one, but I believe it was painted after it was printed. Sometimes artists do that. They will like print the like black and white, and then they will fill it in with maybe it looks like colored ink is what they used. Um, I don't think this was printed. I don't think this is a polychrome. What's called a polychrome print, which is where you print multiple colors on top of each other and stuff. I don't think that's what this is. I think it's painted afterwards. All right, iconography. So, who do you see or what do you see? Who are the subjects? And think about what makes you say that. Why would you consider them what you think they are? Good, Fatima. So there's like maybe a family in the middle, um, and they're the focus, right? Well, of course they're in the middle, so they're focus. Well, what makes you say that they're a family? Maricela, yeah, so there's people celebrating for sure. What makes you say that they're celebrating? Good, Callie. Yeah, a small band at the bottom. Yeah, so down here it looks like there's a band, right? Festival, cultural items such celebrations. It looks like a festival. Ooh, Jimin. Yes, it does look like Teguk, right? Yeah, I wasn't gonna use that word, but it does. Yes, good, Fatima. So they're hugging, laughing, and facing each other. Good, Claire. Everyone, kids, farmers, bands, other professions, they're dancing, playing music, letting loose. Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of stuff. It definitely is like a festival, right? Um, but what kind of like how would you identify them? Do they what kind of people do they look like? Does that make sense? Like, I guess just to be okay, laborers. Yeah, maybe they're laborers, right? Commoners, performers, yeah, common people, maybe. Yeah, exactly. Korean laborers. Yeah, this is the word. Yeah, this is what I'm looking for, Elsa. Korean. They're supposed to look Korean, right? Um, so from their outfits and their props. So there's kind of a mixture. Like up here, there's like a miner, there's like a fishing trio here, a boy riding an ox. Um, there is, of course, this man and a woman maybe reuniting, I guess. Down here, this is this is a band. It's called Sangmo. Sangmo is like these people, they wear the hats that have these like spinny things on them. You don't need to know that term, but this is kind of a traditional or Joseon period form of performance, and it says 민족 통일, which means unify the people of Korea, right? So yeah, they're intended to look Korean on some level. Yeah, Korean traditional instruments, right? This drum is, these cymbals are exactly. So composition, how would you describe this composition? How are things laid out? Jimin had a good word for it earlier. Like a spiral. Yeah, that's what I say too. It's like a spiral. But what is it kind of going toward? Yes, good, Claire. It swirls into the center. Exactly. It's two lines. Oh, Ian, this is a great way. Two lines intersecting in a spiral. And Claire, it swirls into the center. Exactly. Yeah. Oh yeah, the perspective. So notice how this one is a little bit different. Yeah, so a taeguk. Taeguk is kind of like a yin yang or yang in Korean is what it's called. You kind of get that idea from this, an yang or yin yang type of composition, right? Which is like the two halves of a circle coming together, right? Exactly. So yeah, the perspective though, what's different about this perspective? I already put it on the slide, but that's okay. Like, yeah, a bird's eye. That's another way to put it, Callie. Yeah. So I said aerial view. It's like you're looking down upon these people, right? So you kind of get to see everything that they're doing very clearly. Yeah, top-down view. Sorry, I need to plug my computer in. Okay, style. So what are some, how would you describe the lines, colors, the overall look of it? Um, or any other stylistic, maybe stylistic inspirations or influences you see they're referencing? Yeah, very simple. I said simple as well. The lines are very simple. They're kind of just used to like make the form of the people and the subject, right? Um, yeah, the background is blank. Right, exactly. I said that too. It's all white. It's very for that it's quite simple. Minimalist. Yeah, you could say that. What about the colors though? Yeah, good, Daphne. But they're solid colors. Yeah, there's no shading or anything, but they're solid colors. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Um, so I said that too. Simple lines, color fills. I said kind of cartoonish. It kind of feels a little cartoonish. That's not a bad thing. There's nothing wrong with being cartoons are very affective, right? Pre-modern inspired. Does anyone remember this in the reading? What were they inspired? Some of these artists, especially the woodblock print artists. Joseon, yes, Joseon era paintings, particularly, right? So we'll look at that in a moment. So what Minjun goal does this artwork convey? Yeah, unification for sure. And traditionalism, yeah. Unification and traditionalism, it, when you look at the art, it tends to go together. Um, yeah, joy. Joy is very powerful, right? Just the joy of being together. Hope for peace, yeah. So what makes you say that? Yeah, so the celebration, the unity is conveyed through the swirling. Very good, Elsa. Very good. Yeah, everyone is going toward the same place, right? Very good. So yeah, the text. So let's look at this. So we're talking about the Chosun inspiration here. So this is an artwork that she presents. How do they compare? What do you think? This is a very famous painting. You will always see this when people talk about Korean art. Um, yeah, similar layout and dancing. Yeah, so the subject, the iconography is kind of similar. Obviously, the Kim Bong-joon, this 1980s one, is updated, right? They're wearing more up-to-date modern styles of clothing, but the sentiment is very similar, and the iconographic basis is pretty similar, right? Yeah, they're both stylized. Yeah, very good. So that means that they both have their own particular way that they look. Like it couldn't really be they couldn't be another artist's work, basically. Yeah. Yeah, the circle. The circle is very big, right? There's this circular composition here in both of them, yeah. And yeah, the iconography of the celebration, exactly. Yes, good. Yeah, the clothes are more detailed in this one for sure. And this one is obviously more zoomed in, yeah. But it still kind of has a slight aerial kind of upward diagonal perspective, right? Good. Okay, so comparative visual analysis. So what you want to do is you want to first start with like descriptive similarities and differences and have that be a paragraph, and then do interpretive similarities and differences and have that be a paragraph when you're writing a comparative visual analysis. So you don't want to have like one paragraph describes one of them and talks about what it means. One paragraph describes the other and talks about what it means. You need to talk about them, the two artworks together all the time, okay? So what are some similarities in the way that you would describe these? What are some describe these two artworks? So what are some descriptive similarities? So it could be similarities in medium, iconography, composition, style. Okay, yes, that's a good difference, Kyle, but we want similarities first. Good, okay. So both depict farmers and families. Yes, both depict workers. Very good, yeah. Both focus on traditional icons. Yes, very good. Let's see, what else? Yeah, Korean focus. There's the focus on Korean. Yeah, good. Happiness. Yeah, okay. So I also said the colors. These were the only two. Sometimes you'll have a lot of similarities, sometimes you won't, but you need to find something. Bright colors too. So yes, their colors are quite different, but they both use that sense of brightness in their color to kind of communicate that sense of happiness, community, whatnot. All right, differences. So we have one. So the painting has a background. The print does not have a background. What else? It can be the most, remember, it can be the most basic things too. So medium is different, right? Okay, so the perspective, very good, Ian. So the woodblock print has an aerial view, but the painting uses linear perspective. Yes, good, Hunter. So the painting uses a border and the woodblock print does not. There are American related or US American related symbols in the painting, but not in the woodblock print. Very good, Fatima. Good. Yes, Claire. The woodblock print is laid out like a swirl, whereas the painting has a clear foreground, midground, and background. Very good. That's very, very well stated. Let's see. Yeah, okay. All of these are great. We have a lot of repeats here. Let me see if there's any that I didn't get here. I think I had all of these, right? So start with the most basic one. Their media is different. So woodblock versus oil painting. So yeah, Korean symbols only versus symbols of the USA. Blank background versus landscape setting. Arrow perspective versus linear perspective. Now the overall style, that's something you can comment on too. So this one is kind of that cartoonish style, whereas this one it looks a little bit more realistic, but it is surreal and it's kind of in a lot of ways as well, right? So basically you want to take all of this and put it into a paragraph. And it would look something like this. And I'm not going to read it for you, but you can come back to this while you're doing your plenary response tonight and really use this as a reference for you. All right, and then the second paragraph is the interpretive similarities. So in what ways are their meanings the same? So how do their Minjun goals relate to each other? Or how does their kind of subjective like focus relate to each other? What do you think? Okay, good. Yes, they're both calling for unification. Exactly. Yeah. Unifying the Korean people. Exactly. Yes, they both celebrate farming and traditional Korea. Absolutely. Yeah. Those are both the things that I put too. Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah. Support the common people, value Korean tradition. Yeah, exactly. Very good. Um, differences. What are some interpretive differences? So differences in like what they're concerned with, who they show. Yes, very good, Ian. The painting is more explicitly anti-US. That's very important here. That's a very good nuance, right? So there's no mention of the US or reference to cultural imperialism in the woodblock print. But the painting is all about that, right? Yeah, exactly. Very good, Fatima. Yeah, the first one is solely positive, right? Everything is about the positivity of unification. The painting it demonstrates the negativity. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good. This is all basically what I said too, right? The print focuses on Korean culture while the painting very explicitly shows who the enemy of Minjung is, or who is the oppressor, right? Exactly. Good. And so you would take these two ideas and you would just basically put them into a paragraph, like this one. Again, I'm not going to read it, but it'll be there for you to reference. Okay, so 1987 was the climax of the Minjung movement, and this basically started. So in January, there was a Seoul National University student who was murdered by the police, and his name was Park Jong-chul. And after him, there was another university student from Yonsei University named Lee Han-yeol, and he was then murdered. He was, I guess, not necessarily murdered, but he got hit in the head by a tear gas canister from the military police, and he had to go to the hospital. He was put into a coma. He died a month later. So these two deaths really led to a lot of fervor among the Minjung protests. And there's the climax movement is called the June 10th movement. When in all across the nation, people were rallying behind Lee Han-yeol, and also Park Jong-chul. And this led to this guy, Jeon Do-hwan's successor. His name is Roh Tae-woo. He announced that they were going to finally do democratic elections, and everyone said, okay. And he's the one who actually got elected, kind of ironically. But he is the one who announced it, so I think that helped him. Um, so yeah, so you see this image. We don't have time for it, unfortunately, but this image is very big in Minjung art. You see it a lot, which is bring back Lee Han-yeol, or save Lee Han-yeol. And he was one who died from the tear gas canister. It's a very powerful image. And you're more than welcome to write about it for your plenary response. Okay, so finishing up here, the prompt: choose two artworks either from the plenary session, the blog, or from Charlotte Horlick's chapter. Conduct a comparative visual analysis of the two. So do not compare the same two from class. So do not do the print and the painting that we just talked about, the Kim Bong-joon print and the Shin Hak-chul painting. You can choose one of them and compare it to a different artwork, but you can't compare them together. So make sure to describe their similarities and differences in medium, iconography, composition, and style. Comparatively interpret which Minjung goals or themes the two communicate. So how are their meanings related or relevant to each other or not? How do they convey the theme or goal similarly and differently? And you need to include at least one citation to help evidence your claims about the two artworks to either Horlick, Stiller, or Robinson. It should be probably, for a comparative, it should be should be between 250 and 300 words. So in a comparative of visual analysis, you should see a lot of comparison words. So if you write your thing and you review it and you don't see words like this, you probably didn't do it correctly. So, and also, but, however, likewise, similarly, contrarily, unlike, on the other hand, all these kinds of words, those are your friends for a comparative analysis. Okay, you're welcome to go. I'm sorry for keeping you over. Thank you so much for your diligence. Um, yes. So I will take questions as well. So yes, Kyle. So one paragraph should be dedicated just to like the descriptive similarities and differences. Um, and you can kind of talk about, you can divide it into two paragraphs if you want to do that. Sometimes students do that. I tend to think it can just take one. Um, and then the second paragraph should be the answering the interpretation question, right? Talking about them in comparative. Does that make sense? Okay.
I just had a quick question.
Yes, let me stop recording really quick.